Cracks in the armor. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning when Isla collapsed in Marcus's kitchen. She'd been reviewing surgical procedures over breakfast when sharp pain stabbed through her skull, followed by dizziness that sent her crashing to the marble floor. Marcus found her there 20 minutes later, convulsing slightly, her face pale and drawn. His medical training kicked in instantly, but Isla caught something else in his gray eyes as he knelt beside her. Genuine terror. "Isla, stay with me," he said, his usually controlled voice tight with fear. "Tell me what you're experiencing." "Head hurts," she gasped between waves of pain. "Vision's blurry. Feels like something's wrong inside my brain." Marcus was already on his phone, calling for emergency transport. But his free hand stayed on Isla's forehead, cool and steadying. "Possible intracranial pressure. We need scans immediately." At the hospital, Isla drifted in and out of consciousness during tests. She was vaguely aware of Marcus's voice, sharper than usual, as he demanded faster results, better equipment, answers that seemed to elude everyone. When she finally woke fully, Marcus sat beside her bed, looking haggard in a way she'd never seen. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his surgical scrubs wrinkled, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. "Welcome back," he said softly, relief evident in his voice. "What happened to me?" Isla asked, her throat dry. "Severe migraine, triggered by stress and sleep deprivation," Marcus explained, but his expression remained troubled. However, the scans showed some unusual neural activity, patterns I've only seen in conjunction with Nova's technology. "What kind of patterns?" Marcus hesitated. "Enhanced neural pathway development. Your brain is adapting to process information differently. Exposure to interdimensional healing frequencies can trigger evolution in human consciousness." "You're saying your alien technology is changing my brain?" "Potentially. Nova believes some humans are naturally compatible with their healing methods. You might be developing abilities that could revolutionize medicine." "And you didn't think to warn me about this?" Marcus's composure cracked completely. "I never expected you to be affected. Isla, I'm sorry. I should have protected you better." The word "protected" hung between them, carrying implications neither had acknowledged. Isla studied Marcus's face, seeing past his clinical mask to something raw and unguarded. "You were terrified," she said quietly, "when you found me." "I thought I might lose you," Marcus admitted, the words seeming to surprise him. "And I realized that somewhere in the past month, you'd become—" "What?" "Important," he finished, looking away, which wasn't supposed to happen. Isla felt her heart skip. "Marcus!" "This arrangement was supposed to be simple," he continued, his voice rough, clinical, safe. "But living with you, watching you try to bring warmth to my cold world, seeing your compassion for patients." He met her eyes. "You make me remember why I became a doctor in the first place. And that scares you." "Terrifies me," Marcus said honestly. "Everyone I've ever cared about has left. My parents died when I was 12. My mentor, your grandfather, passed away before I could thank him properly. Caring about people only leads to loss." Isla reached for his hand, feeling the slight tremor in his usually steady fingers. "Not everyone leaves, Marcus, and not all risks lead to loss." When Marcus kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent, Isla felt electricity shoot through her entire nervous system. But it wasn't just physical attraction. It was recognition, connection, the sense of finding something she hadn't known she was searching for. "The neural changes," Marcus said against her skin, "are accelerating your empathic abilities. You can actually feel what others are experiencing. It's why my technology responds to you. Is that why you're holding back? Because you're afraid I'll sense how much you care? I'm holding back because once I admit how I feel about you, there's no going back to safe distance. Maybe safe distance is overrated, Isla whispered. When Marcus kissed her properly, soft and desperate, Isla felt barriers dissolving that had been built over years of self-protection. His hands tangled in her hair while she pressed closer, both of them finally acknowledging what had been building since the day they'd met. The neural changes, Marcus murmured against her lips, are accelerating your empathic abilities. You can actually feel what others are experiencing. It's why my technology responds to you. Is that why you're holding back? Because you're afraid I'll sense how much you care? I'm holding back because once I admit how I feel about you, there's no going back to safe distance. Maybe safe distance is overrated, Isla whispered. When Marcus kissed her properly, soft and desperate, Isla felt barriers dissolving that had been built over years of self-protection. His hands tangled in her hair while she pressed closer, both of them finally acknowledging what had been building since the day they'd met. This complicates everything, Marcus murmured against her lips. The best things usually do, Isla replied, pulling him back down to her. Hearts colliding. Recovery from her collapse kept Isla home for a week, during which Marcus surprised her by taking time off, something his colleagues claimed he'd never done in 15 years of practice. They spent days talking, sharing stories about their childhoods, their fears, their dreams of healing others. Isla discovered that Marcus collected vintage medical texts, that he played piano when he thought no one was listening, and that he'd become a neurosurgeon partly to understand the mysteries of consciousness that had fascinated him since childhood. You became a healer because of loss, Nova observed one evening as she monitored Isla's neural adaptation. Both of you. It's why your consciousness patterns harmonize so perfectly with our healing frequencies. They were in Marcus's study, surrounded by technology that responded to Isla's emotional state with increasing sensitivity. When she felt happy, the displays showed warm, golden patterns. When Marcus touched her hand, the entire system hummed with harmonic resonance. Our people have waited centuries for humans to develop this level of empathic healing ability. Isla's evolution could revolutionize medicine for both our species. But only if she chooses this path, Marcus said firmly, his arm tightening around Isla's waist. No pressure, no expectations, her choice. The protective edge in his voice made Isla's heart race. This was the man who claimed not to do emotions, defending her agency with fierce determination. That night, they made love for the first time, and it was nothing like the clinical arrangement they'd originally planned. Marcus was reverent, almost worshipful, mapping every inch of her skin like a sacred text. Isla lost herself in his touch, in the way he whispered her name like a prayer, and the intensity of connection that seemed to transcend physical pleasure. I love you, Marcus confessed afterward, as they lay tangled in his sheets, the lights from the city painting patterns on their skin. I didn't want to. I fought it every day. But Isla, you've become the most important thing in my world. I love you too, Isla replied, tracing the scar on his shoulder from a childhood accident. Even when you were trying so hard to push me away. Especially then, Marcus said with a rueful smile. You kept insisting on caring about me despite every signal I gave you not to. Their peace was shattered when Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, Marcus's department head, requested an emergency meeting. Seated in her office, surrounded by medical awards and stern expressions, Isla felt like she was being evaluated for worthiness. Dr. Kane, she began, her voice sharp with disapproval. It's come to my attention that your recent marriage was arranged for financial benefit rather than genuine affection. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. My personal life doesn't affect my professional performance. Doesn't it? Elizabeth pulled out a folder, thick with documentation. You've been taking time off, declining surgeries, spending hospital resources on unauthorized research, involving unconventional consultation. Isla felt Nova's presence before seeing her, the alien woman materializing in the corner where shadows gathered. Only Isla seemed to notice her, a reminder of how her perceptions had changed. My research has yielded unprecedented results, Marcus said firmly. Surgical success rates have improved by 30% since implementing new techniques. Techniques developed through collaboration with entities.
The impossible condition. Dr. Isla McClund sat in the mahogany-paneled office of Henderson and Associates, her hands trembling as she reread the document that would determine her entire future. At 25, she had already lost more than most people faced in a lifetime, but this final blow felt like the cruelest twist of fate imaginable. "I still don't understand," Isla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would grandfather do this to me?" Mr. Henderson, the family attorney, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses with the practiced sympathy of someone who delivered life-altering news regularly. "Your grandfather was concerned about leaving you alone in the world, Dr. McClund. After losing your parents and grandmother, he wanted to ensure you had protection and security." Isla stared at the will's specific clause again, the words blurring through her unshed tears. The inheritance was substantial, enough to complete her medical degree at Edinburgh University, fund her revolutionary research into pediatric neurological disorders, and establish the free clinic for children that had been her dream since childhood. Everything she had worked toward for 8 years of study, every sleepless night spent researching treatments for conditions that stole children's futures, every sacrifice she'd made to honor her family's legacy of healing, all of it hung in the balance of an impossible condition. She had to marry within 6 months. Not just anyone, but a man her grandfather deemed suitable for protecting her granddaughter's future and reputation. "There is, however, a recommendation in the will," Mr. Henderson continued, sliding another folder across the desk. "Your grandfather specifically suggested Dr. Marcus Kane as an ideal candidate." Isla's breath caught. Everyone in the medical community knew that name. Dr. Marcus Kane, renowned neurosurgeon at Royal Infirmary Hospital, whose surgical skills were legendary and whose emotional detachment was equally famous. They called him the Ice King of Edinburgh, a man who could perform miracles with a scalpel, but reportedly felt nothing for anyone. "He knew Dr. Kane?" Isla asked, bewildered. "Your grandfather mentored him during his residency years ago. They maintained professional contact, and your grandfather believed Dr. Kane would honor an arrangement that benefited both parties." Arrangement. The word tasted bitter in Isla's mouth. This wasn't the 18th century. People didn't arrange marriages anymore, especially not brilliant doctors who should have the freedom to choose their own paths. But as Isla looked at her student debt, her empty bank account, and the research proposals that had been rejected for lack of funding, she knew the truth. Without this inheritance, her dreams would die. She could continue working as a junior resident for years, watching children suffer from conditions she could potentially cure if she only had the resources to pursue her research. "I need to think about this," Isla said, standing abruptly. "You have 1 week to decide," Mr. Henderson replied gently. "After that, Dr. Kane has indicated he'll withdraw his consideration for other opportunities." Other opportunities? As if she were nothing more than a business proposal to be evaluated and potentially discarded. 3 days later, Isla found herself standing outside the imposing glass towers of Royal Infirmary Hospital. clutching a folder containing her academic credentials and a formal request for a meeting. The October wind whipped through Edinburgh's streets, carrying the scent of rain and the weight of her desperation. Dr. Kane's office occupied the top floor, a space that breathed authority and achievement. Medical journals lined the walls, awards gleamed in display cases, but there was nothing personal, nothing that revealed the man behind the reputation. Marcus Kane stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, his tall frame silhouetted against the afternoon sky. When he turned, Isla felt her breath catch. The photographs in medical journals hadn't captured the striking intensity of his presence. The sharp cheekbones, the penetrating gray eyes, the way he seemed to command space simply by existing within it. "Dr. McClund." His voice was deep, controlled, revealing nothing. "Thank you for coming." "Dr. Kane," Isla replied, forcing steadiness into her voice despite her racing heart. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet with me." He gestured to a chair across from his minimalist desk, everything about the interaction clinical and professional. Isla sat carefully, noting how he maintained precise distance, how his expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. "Your grandfather was an excellent mentor," Marcus said finally. "I owe his memory a considerable debt." "I'm not here to collect on debts," Isla said quietly. "I'm here because, apparently, we both need something the other can provide." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, surprise perhaps at her directness. "And what exactly do you believe I need, Dr. McClund?" Isla met his gaze steadily. "According to the will, a substantial donation to your neurological research wing. Enough funding to pursue experimental treatments that traditional channels won't support." "And you need?" "My inheritance, my future, my ability to help children who don't have any other options." They studied each other across the desk, two brilliant minds calculating odds and outcomes. Isla noticed how Marcus held himself like armor, every gesture controlled, every expression carefully neutral. "What kind of arrangement did you have in mind?" he asked. "Marriage on paper only," Isla said, proud of how steady her voice remained. "Separate lives, separate residences if necessary. After a reasonable period, a quiet divorce. You get your funding, I get my inheritance." Marcus was quiet for so long, Isla wondered if he'd reject her proposal entirely. When he finally spoke, his words changed everything. "One condition," he said. "You'll live in my home. Appearances matter for an arrangement like this to be legally sound." Isla's heart hammered against her ribs. Living with Marcus Kane meant constant proximity to a man who already unsettled her in ways she couldn't explain. "How long?" she managed. 18 months minimum," Marcus replied. "After that, we reassess." Looking into Marcus's gray eyes, seeing something she couldn't quite identify lurking beneath his controlled exterior, Isla realized she was about to step into a situation far more complicated than a simple business arrangement. "Agreed," she whispered, and sealed her fate with a handshake that lingered just a moment too long. Living with ice. Moving into Marcus's penthouse felt like stepping into a museum of surgical precision. Every surface gleamed with cold perfection, marble countertops, steel fixtures, and windows that offered commanding views of Edinburgh's skyline, but no warmth whatsoever. Isla's single suitcase looked pathetic in the guest bedroom, a space decorated in shades of gray and white that felt more like a luxury hospital room than a home. "Your wing is entirely private," Marcus explained with clinical detachment as he showed her around. "I maintain the west side. We'll share the kitchen and main living area, but I'm rarely home except to sleep." "How convenient," Isla murmured, unable to hide her sarcasm. Marcus's eyes flicked to her briefly. "This arrangement works best with minimal personal interaction. I assume you agree." Before Isla could respond, the air in the room seemed to shift, and a figure materialized from what had appeared to be empty space. Isla's breath caught as she found herself looking at the most extraordinary being she'd ever seen. Tall and graceful, with luminous purple skin that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Her features were beautiful, but distinctly non-human, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in Isla's bones. "Marcus, the neural interface requires calibration," she said, then noticed Isla. "Ah, the new human partner." Isla stared, her medical training warring with the impossibility of what she was seeing. "Marcus, who is this?" "Dr. Nova," Marcus replied calmly, as if introducing purple-skinned beings was a routine. "My research consultant. Nova, this is Dr. McClund." Nova studied Isla with eyes that held ancient wisdom. "Fascinating. Her neural patterns show remarkable compatibility with our healing frequencies." "Ours?" Isla's voice came out higher than intended. "Nova represents advanced medical research," Marcus explained vaguely. "Her insights have revolutionized neurosurgical techniques." But Isla caught the way Nova's skin shifted colors when she spoke, the way her presence seemed to bend light around her. Whatever Marcus was involved with, it was far beyond normal medical practice. "I should let you settle in," Marcus said, clearly uncomfortable with the questions forming in Isla's eyes. "Dinner is at 8 if you choose to join me." As he left with Nova, Isla sank onto the pristine bed, her mind reeling. She'd agreed to marry a man she barely knew, moved into his sterile penthouse, and apparently stumbled into something involving beings that shouldn't exist.